The law of attraction is an idea that's heavily promoted in both the self-help industry and New Age spiritual communities. And the idea itself is really simple enough, right? Positive thoughts and feelings are going to attract positive things into your life. And while the idea behind the law of attraction movement actually originated over 180 years ago, it's only been in about the last 20 years or so that it's literally infiltrated mainstream and become a massively profitable industry for a very select handful of spiritual and self-help gurus. So in this video, I want to share my personal story about the law of attraction with you because my first encounter with these ideas and with this doctrine was way back in the mid-1980s when I was a teenager and attending the local Church of Religious Science in Huntington Beach, California. And what happened is over the next 30 years of my life, I struggled to make these teachings work for me, and because of that, I felt like there must be something wrong with me until I realized that the truth is that there's something inherently wrong about the law of attraction. So stay tuned because you're going to want to hear what I have to tell you. Hey there, I'm Lisa Engles, and welcome to my channel where I help spiritual seekers to become spiritual finders by harnessing the ancient wisdom of yoga to live an extraordinary life. Now, the goal of my channel is really quite simple. It's just to make it easier than ever before for anyone to find happiness and fulfillment in their everyday life by using what has already been passed down for millennia, and also to dispel any popular myths, especially in New Age spirituality, which hold us back without our even knowing. Now, before I dive into this video, I want to let you know about a very special free 3-hour virtual workshop that I have coming up on January 8th from 9 a.m. to noon Pacific time. If you are tired with struggling with the law of attraction or any other intention setting techniques, then I invite you to join me for my 2022 Resolution Solution Workshop, where you're going to learn a unique, powerful, and highly effective method based in time-proven yogic wisdom to manifest a life of freedom, fulfillment, and abundance that you want in 2022. I put the link in to the registration page below in the description. And I just want to let you know that if you are someone who's been struggling with the law of attraction, then this workshop really is for you. I promise I will not be teaching the law of attraction or what you've been doing wrong. There won't be any blaming you for not being clear enough with your intentions or for not believing in what you were trying to manifest, and there won't be any work around getting unblocked. Instead, I'm going to be teaching you this method that actually works for creating a life of ease and flow and fulfillment. I definitely hope that you'll be joining me for this. It's free, and again, the link is in the description below. The doctrine of the law of attraction tells us that everything in the universe is energy, including, of course, our thoughts and our feelings, and that you attract everything that is vibrating at the same frequency as your thoughts and feelings, sort of like a radio station. That's usually the analogy they give, right, of a radio station where you can, when you tune into a specific radio station, it tunes specifically into that band or that frequency. So you can only hear the songs that are on that particular radio station. So the doctrine says that you can change your life by changing your thoughts. When you set an intention and you put that intention into the universe and think and feel at the same vibration of that thing that you want to manifest and that you desire, you're going to attract it back into your life. Now, on the flip side, of course, it works in the negative as well. So the law of attraction says that your negative thoughts and your negative feelings can attract negative things into your life as well. So the takeaway really with the law of attraction is that you can change your reality by changing your thoughts and feelings. And what makes the law of attraction feels so alluring to so many people is this idea that you can actually control all of the circumstances of your life by simply creating intentions and then visualizing them coming true. So if you just get into the right frequency, the right vibration, you can actually begin to attract those things that you want and most desire into your life. However, with closer investigation of this doctrine, it completely falls apart. And I say this from my own personal experience. Now, my first encounter with New Age spirituality started when I was 15 years old, and I began attending the local Church of Religious Science in Huntington Beach, California with my mother. And I actually loved going to church every Sunday because the minister there, Peggy Bassett was her name, was so inspiring. And for me, going to church didn't feel like going to church. It actually felt like going to a motivational seminar. And so fast forward just several years later, after I graduated from college, I enrolled in classes at a Church of Religious Science, which was in San Diego, where I was living at the time, because I wanted to learn everything that I could about this philosophy, about this new thought movement. I wanted to know more about the philosophy. I wanted to understand what it was all about. I learned all about the founder of the Church of Religious Science as well, who's Ernest Holmes. And I began to study New Thought with the fervor of someone who might be studying for a college degree. I literally picked up every book that I could read about the New Thought movement, about anything that was metaphysical. I was into it. And again, by this time, it was in the 90s. And there was a local metaphysical bookstore where I lived in Encinitas, California. And I was literally in that bookstore, if not once a week, more than once a week, buying yet another book or audio tapes, because CDs weren't around, or they were around, but it was still, lots of tapes as well as CDs. I'm sort of dating myself. And I began to learn everything that I could about manifestation, and I began using manifestation tools and techniques, any tools and techniques that I could get my hands onto to create a better life for myself. And for a very long time, years, about 10 years, a decade, I tried to manifest the job of my dreams, more money, better relationships, all of it. And it always seemed like I would have some success, but not very much. In fact, I was mostly left with high hopes and totally failed dreams. And there came a point where I was at an all-time low in my life. I had already, in my 20s, suffered through 2 very abusive relationships. And now, by this point, I was unhappily married with a young daughter, and I was on the brink of divorce, and I was struggling at that time to get my personal training business off the ground. And I didn't know what to do. I was meditating every day. I was working on all of my limiting beliefs. I was journaling. I was saying affirmations, you name it. I was doing it. I was doing energy work. I was clearing my chakras. Again, you name it, I was doing it. On top of that, I had professional studies in somatic healing. I was a certified life coach. I was a master EFT practitioner. So here I was, a professional, professionally trained and certified in all modalities that had to do with healing and manifestation. I was helping other people in personal growth. And here I felt like I was doing everything that I could, that I was being told that I was supposed to do. And I had nothing to show for it. I literally had nothing to show for it. And I was just about to give up because I had already, by this point, it was 2005, 4 or so, and I had been doing this for about 20 years when the movie What the Bleep came out, and a couple of years later The Secret had come out. And I think everybody who's watching that has seen at least The Secret, if you haven't seen What the Bleep and The Secret. But what happened was, for me, these two movies completely renewed my energy to dive deeper into my own practice, into my own spiritual practices. And those two movies actually restored my belief in the idea that I was creating my own reality. But I wish I had known then what I discovered 10 years down the line. But unfortunately, I drank the law of attraction Kool-Aid and went even into an even deeper downward spiral of, I would say, self-loathing, lack of self-worth, blaming myself for not being good enough to create what I truly wanted in my life. I kept wondering to myself, how come this law that's supposedly scientifically true wasn't working for me? What I didn't understand at that time was that central to the claim of the law of attraction, that the vibration of your thoughts and feelings attracts things of similar vibrations, that law has no scientific basis behind it. And the reason why I had mistakenly believed that the law of attraction had some type of scientific basis to it was because all of the gurus and the teachers who were promoting it, all of those expert scientists, they called themselves scientists and they call themselves doctors, in What the Bleep, and all of those self-help gurus in The Secret were making it sound like the law of attraction was valid, was a valid scientific thing, because they were using scientific words and references like quantum reality or energy or particles. They were using these terms to claim its legitimacy in science and to make it sound valid, when in fact the law of attraction fails to comply with any type of science or scientific method. It's known in the science world and amongst science to be a pseudoscience. So, like I said, and I'm not really proud to say it, but I spent another 10 years after those 20 years. So I spent in total 30 years of struggling to make the law of attraction work for me. And most of the time I would get nothing that I wanted or visualized. But it was two things that kept me hooked to the law of attraction. And the first is what I call one-offs. And those are, maybe you can relate to this, those few and far between times when I was coincidentally manifesting those things that I wanted. Maybe it was a connection with someone, or I'd get a little bit of money coming in. Nothing too big would really ever happen, but they were big enough to keep me thinking that the law of attraction must be working. And then the other thing, and I think that this is maybe the more important thing that kept me hooked, was something that I later learned was a logic fallacy. And it's a logic fallacy called an unfalsifiable claim. And this is exactly what the law of attraction is. It's an unfalsifiable claim. And what that means is that it's a claim that is made impossible to prove false. So with the law of attraction, we all know that you either manifest what you want in your life or you don't manifest what you want in your life. You're either successful or you're unsuccessful in manifesting. But either way, the burden of what happens falls squarely on your shoulders, on my shoulders, for whatever the results are, right? That burden is on your shoulders. You get to bear that burden. If you're successful in manifesting what you wanted, it's because your thoughts and your feelings were aligned with what you wanted. They were the right vibration. But if you were unsuccessful in manifesting what you wanted, well, then your thoughts and your feelings, you're responsible for them, right? They weren't aligned. So what happens is that no matter what, you're the one who's responsible for everything that happens to you in your life. The law of attraction experts they're basically taken off of the hook, right? You can't place any blame on them, and they tell you things like what's holding you back is that you don't believe strongly enough in the law of attraction, or you're not successful because you still have subconscious blocks to the law of attraction, or you weren't being clear enough in your intention and what you wanted to manifest, or you didn't feel that desire strongly enough. Does any of that sound familiar? Because that's what I was hearing when I was trying to work with the law of attraction. So the claim, your thoughts create your reality, is impossible to disprove, right? It's always your fault if something bad happens to you, and the guru or the teacher is always blameless. And this becomes very, very dangerous, especially now when we're at a time when the law of attraction has become an industry that is making a lot of money. I mean, I don't know. I haven't checked online, but I'm sure that I could check and see that it's making in the millions, certainly, if not the billions of dollars industry, right? So this was the conundrum that I personally found myself in. It was always my fault. And every time I did the work to clear my core limiting belief, which was I'm not good enough, I was faced with the proof right in my face, literally faced in my face with the proof that I wasn't good enough because, well, look at what I'm manifesting or not manifesting in my life. And 5 years after those movies, came out, when I had doubled down on the law of attraction, 5 years later, I was divorced and single. Woohoo, right? I was still struggling with growing my business, and I felt like a fucking complete shit show trying to hold my life together. That was my reality. Hello. So guess what else I was doing? I was still meditating every day. I was still journaling. I was still doing my affirmations. And by this time, I was fucking on my knees praying for a miracle because my life was even lower than it was 5 years prior to that. And I didn't know what to do at that point. And it was around 2009 or 2010 that a friend gave me a book that became a turning point for me. And it was a slow turning, I have to admit. I had a lot of deconditioning to do. But nonetheless, it was a turning point. And that book was the autobiography of a yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And it opened a doorway for me to seeing a different view of reality. It gave me an out from the law of attraction. It was my introduction into this whole world that I've been steeped in for quite some time now, the world of yoga and yoga wisdom and yoga philosophy and yoga practices, right? But, like I said, it took me about another 5 more years until 2015 to finally part ways or to have my final breakup with the law of attraction. And that actually happened partly because of my ventures into yoga and yoga philosophy, but also because I happened to land a job with an organization where one of my primary jobs, one of the primary tasks that I was given was to research how memes spread in public culture. And part of this was understanding how, things like cults and brainwashing work and how movements are actually created. Like, how do you actually change the minds of people en masse? As part of this job, I started to learn all about logic fallacies and how they're used to deceive ourselves and to deceive others. And we all use logic fallacies all the time. I mean, when you start to learn about logic fallacies, you can start to spot how you're deceiving yourself, but also how others are trying to deceive you. And essentially, as I became more familiar with logic fallacies, I discovered that in addition to this unfalsifiable claim, right, we already talked about that, I was also being trapped by a couple of other logic fallacies. And the first is confirmation bias. And maybe you've heard of this before. A confirmation bias is probably one of the most common types of bias that we all have. And a confirmation bias is simply the tendency to interpret evidence as confirmation of your own existing beliefs. So this explains why I kept believing in the law of attraction when I'd have, one of those one-offs happen to me. An opportunity or an experience would seemingly happen out of nowhere, and I would attribute it to the law of attraction because of my own confirmation bias. But then there's also this fallacy called motivated reasoning, where you accept explanations and reasons that match your own beliefs and you throw away all other explanations. So again, anything that didn't line up with my belief in the law of attraction, I would just dismiss it altogether. So this is exactly why I was unable to break free from my own limiting belief that I wasn't good enough, because I believed that I must be creating my own reality and I was the one to blame. And any other logical explanation, like I needed maybe to have a better business plan, or I needed to really take myself seriously as a business owner, or maybe perhaps I need to learn how to manage my money better. No, those weren't options, of why I struggled with money or with business. I also dismissed any other number of other factors that might come into play regarding my success or my failure with things that I wanted to manifest in my life, including, things like my talent or my upbringing, or maybe how much work that I was actually putting into things, or even where I lived, or the opportunities that were available to me because of my race or my gender or my age or my religion or my affiliations. All of those things are factors into why we get what we want or don't get what we want in our life, right? So I hope that this is, you're beginning to see from my own personal story just how devastating the law of attraction can actually be in your life. And as I distance myself more and more from the law of attraction, I dove deeper and deeper into my studies in yoga and yoga philosophy and started to learn about another doctrine. And this doctrine, instead of only being 180 years old, is over 2,000 years old. And it's a doctrine that all Eastern spiritual traditions hold as true. And that is the law of karma. And it's also known as the law of cause and effect. And of course, it's not a law as in, a law in physics. But what the law of karma says, or what this doctrine says, is that for every cause, there is an effect. And while it sounds simple, it's actually quite complex, because what this law tells us is that everything that we're experiencing in our life right now is a result of a very complex web of causes and conditions that are nearly entirely out of our control, completely opposite of the law of attraction. And that actually some of these causes and conditions can be traced back to past lifetimes. So in studying the law of karma, what I found this for myself, this real incredible sense of freedom, because it has given me an entirely new context in which to understand my life and all of the circumstances and events of my life. And the law of karma tells us that while everything that we experience in our life is this result of a complex web of causes and conditions, our destiny isn't written in stone. That we can reshape our destiny, but not in the ways that the law of attraction teaches. In fact, it probably won't surprise you that that the law of attraction actually binds you to a life of ups and downs instead of freeing you from them, like many people would like to have you think. Now, the law of karma, on the other hand, provides an actual map for how to break free of that life of ups and downs and how to discover how to live a life of ease and freedom and fulfillment that's not dependent on your outer circumstances. And that is literally what it did for me. Once I discovered how to use this law of karma to create the life that I wanted to live, I've been happier. I've been more fulfilled at every single level, physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, than I ever have before in my life. And honestly, I wish I had known about this before I learned about the law of attraction, before the whole mess of The Secret and what the bleep happened to me. And I guess I just wanted to share this story with you because in recent weeks, I've heard 3 different stories from 3 different people in my life who have had their own personal struggles with the law of attraction. And all 3 of them remind me of me and where I was at 7 or 8 years ago. And I think that there are a lot of other people who are feeling this same way, looking for a better way to create a life where they're finally free from their self-doubt, where they're free from their anxiety and worry, so that they can confidently move forward in life regardless of the challenges that face them, and without feeling like they have to blame themselves for what's happening in their life. Like, we shouldn't be blaming ourselves for every little thing that's happening in our life that we can't control, right? So I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. What have been your struggles with the law of attraction? And have you tried anything else? And once again, I want to invite you to join me for my free 3-hour resolution solution workshop on January 8th from 9 a.m. to noon Pacific. And in the workshop, we're going to dive very deeply into a unique and powerful and highly effective method for manifesting literally a life of freedom and fulfillment and abundance that's based in yogic wisdom, that's based in something that is time proven and tested, and for getting what you want in 2022. So again, I'll put the link in the registration link in the description below. Thank you so much for taking the time to watch this video all the way through, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Until then, stay safe, stay well, and namaste.